Hello friends and welcome to Switzerland. We're going to be spending the next 7 nights exploring this beautiful country, and honestly I could not be more excited. We got into where we're staying here in Wengen early yesterday afternoon, and I have to say even just the train ride in was so beautiful. We passed by so many cute little Swiss villages. It was so cool watching the mountains just slowly get larger and larger until looking out my window right now they are breathtaking. So it's going to be an amazing week. I'm so excited to take in just so many amazing vistas, wander around towns that are hundreds of years old. If our dinner last night was any indication, the food's going to be amazing. So come along as we explore and make memories in this beautiful country. Before we head out, I want to give you a quick tour. Look at how cute this little Swiss chalet we're staying in is. This morning we're about to head out, going to do some hiking, some exploring of the local area. Need to grab some breakfast for sure, so let's head out now and I'm excited to see what this day holds for us. Okay, so our first stop of the day was for pastries and coffee. We grabbed a couple strudels and coffees at a little bakery near the center of town, and then pretty promptly hopped on the train to Kleine Scheidegg. The train only comes once every half hour, and since we'd already slept in, we wanted to make sure that we were making the most of our time. But the train ride up was absolutely beautiful, the perfect backdrop to enjoy our pastries. It was probably about a 20-minute train ride to the top, but when we reached it, the views were incredible. This is a really popular skiing spot in the winter, but in the summer months, it's the base for a lot of really beautiful hikes. So we decided to pop into, there was a little coffee bar at the top. We got some drinks and enjoyed them while taking it all in. But then after spending some time enjoying the views, we decided to embark on our big adventure of the day. There are so many different hikes that begin in the Kleine Scheidegg area, but the one we decided on was the Panorama trail. The trail is about 3 miles long. There isn't a huge elevation gain, but it's so pretty. It takes you over alpine meadows with these, as the name of the trail would suggest, panoramic views. There were wildflowers along the trail, small waterfalls and ponds. It really was the perfect introduction for us to the Swiss Alps. And towards the end of our hike, we saw a family of locals stooped over some bushes along the side of the trail, and we saw that they were picking something, so we just stopped to ask them what they were doing. Well, turns out there were wild blueberry bushes all along the trail. They'd brought a bag and were just picking and eating some, saving some for later, and they showed us how to find them, so we spent a few minutes picking our own a handful of berries. I have to say, these were so delicious. Then shortly after, we reached the end of our trail in Minigolf. And at the end, we were greeted with the most fun surprise. Right beside the cable car down the mountain, there's this huge and kind of fun and rustic playground. And there was literally everything from rustic bowling to a little obstacle course, a wood swing with some of the best views I've ever had from a swing, even this giant cow with a slide going down the tongue, cowbells that you could play. Needless to say, if you're traveling with kids, I feel like this would be a huge hit, but even as adults, we had maybe more fun than we should have, just having fun and playing here. But then after a bit, we hopped in a cable car and made our way down the mountain. I love how in Switzerland, it feels like even the transportation to and from destinations, the train in the morning, the cable car in the afternoon, it kind of feels like those are all a part of the experience, just because you do get to enjoy such beautiful views as you're going up and down. Probably the part that I found the coolest was as we were going down the mountain, we started hearing the sound of bells. Upon closer inspection, we saw a whole herd of cows all wearing bells. The sound was so beautiful and musical. We came to realize throughout our trip, I guess that's a very traditional thing. Pretty much all the cows we saw in Switzerland were wearing bells. I fell in love with that. To me, it's just one of those things that helps make this country feel so romantic. All right, but then once we exited the gondola, we arrived in Grindelwald, a neighboring alpine town with a ton of charm. So we spent some time wandering the streets, popping into some of the little shops. At this Swiss chocolate chalet, we picked up a couple of truffles that were really tasty. In particular, I got this chocolate pistachio one that was so good. Then as we were walking, we stumbled across this little mini golf course just in the middle of the town. It was so random and not in our plans at all, but it was really beautifully landscaped, had some beautiful views, so we decided why not have a little friendly competition. So we played around and the course proved to be surprisingly challenging, but we still had a lot of fun. Christopher and I are both fairly competitive, especially with each other, so this definitely brought out a little friendly rivalry in us. The final total, Christopher won fairly handily, but I do want to point out I got 3 holes in 1, which I was pretty proud of. But then once we explored Grindelwald, we slowly made our way back to our home base in Wengen. To get there though, the train takes you through Interlaken, which is kind of like the doorway to the mountains. It's a beautiful lakeside city. So since we were already going through it, we decided to stop for a couple of hours to check it out. The spot in particular we stumbled upon was so peaceful and serene. The watercolor here is absolutely incredible. It looks like Gatorade. It's caused by sediment deposited by a glacial runoff. It's called glacial flower, but it makes for some of the most beautiful water, especially at this golden hour time of day. And something that made our time in Interlaken a bit more exciting was, I guess Interlaken is a huge hub for paragliding. I guess it's a big thing in Switzerland, but while we were in Interlaken, we saw, I'd say, no fewer than 30 different paragliders, all making their way down to, there's a nearby field where they all land. But it was fun watching them soar through the air. Some of them were doing tricks. Christopher asked me if I wanted to do it, and I wasn't sure about that, but watching them at least was a lot of fun. And then as the sun was setting, we hopped on a train back to our place, stopping briefly in Lauterbrunnen for some wood-fired pizza. After a long day of hiking and exploring alpine villages, we really enjoyed this meal. So it's close to 9 p.m. We just got back to our chalet. We were out pretty much all day. After we did our hike, we just went straight into exploring Grindelwald, Interlaken, and then we had dinner in Lauterbrunnen, which I think tomorrow we're probably going to go back and spend more time in the Lauterbrunnen area because it was pretty much dark when we arrived. Love to see that more because when we were coming in on the train yesterday and today too, it looks so pretty. Apparently there are 70 different waterfalls in that valley, so love to explore that a bit more. But today really was such a great start to our trip. I'd say highlights of the day were definitely that overlook trail that we did. It wasn't a challenging hike by any stretch. I mean, we literally saw people doing it with jogging strollers. There were all kinds of ages, from little kids to some older people doing the trail. But it was so pretty. I feel like the benefit of taking the train or the gondola up to the top and doing your hike means that you just get incredible views the entire time. It felt like every time that we rounded a corner too, the view just completely shifted and changed into something equally as epic and incredible. So yeah, that was so cool. And then too, when we spotted the little, I think they were a German family, but they were just picking little blueberries on the side of the road, and we just kind of like stopped and talked to them for a few seconds. They showed us where the blueberries were. These blueberry bushes are all along the trail. We just didn't know what they were before, but then we picked a couple handfuls of wild blueberries. They were so good. That was so fun. And then I'd say the other highlight too was when we were in Grindelwald playing the mini golf course. It wasn't the best course that I've ever played. Half of the holes were literally on metal instead of turf, which I guess added its own layer of difficulty, but it was beautifully landscaped and you can't beat those views. Plus I got 3 holes in 1, so it was a fun time. But yeah, overall a very full, fun day. I think tomorrow we're going to spend more time in the Lauterbrunnen Valley. We spent most of our time up on the peaks and exploring the mountains today. Tomorrow's about the valley, the waterfalls, so I'm really looking forward to that. All right, but then the next morning we decided to start our day with exploring Wengen a bit before making our way down to Lauterbrunnen. Even though we'd been staying there, we really hadn't had the chance to explore all that much. So we popped into a couple of the little shops I particularly loved. This was a Swiss-made shop filled with all things made locally here in Switzerland. They had a little bit of everything from cuckoo clocks to toys, some really beautifully painted dishes, fondue pots, tickets. We came home with a couple of items. We picked up an ornament here, some stickers, but then as we made our way out of the store, we noticed some crowds starting to form, and I am so glad that I asked what everybody was waiting for. In a very serendipitous turn of events, we got to catch the annual cow parade. The Swiss cow parade is a centuries-old autumn tradition that happens throughout Switzerland, where cows, all adorned with flower crowns and giant bells, are led down from the mountain pastures where they graze in the summer to the villages and valleys where they'll spend the winter. And for the Swiss, it kind of signals the end of summer. So needless to say, we had so much fun watching all the cows, the farmers. But then following the parade, we caught the train down to Lauterbrunnen, where we planned to spend the day. Our first stop was to find some breakfast and coffee. We ended up at this spot called Flavors Cafe. It was really cute. They had a little book swapping area. And the coffees and breakfast sandwiches we ordered were really good too. But then shortly after breakfast, we caught our first glimpse of what makes Lauterbrunnen truly so iconic, and that's its proximity to Storybook Falls. Storybook is the highest free-falling waterfall in all of Switzerland. We found there's this really neat little trail that you can take that actually takes you up behind the waterfall. You could see these incredible views of the town, and there was even a rainbow. And then after we'd spent plenty of time listening to the roar of the waterfall, watching the water pour down, we decided to continue walking along Lauterbrunnen's valley. And in reflecting on this trip, this walk, hike, whatever you want to call it, it truly was such a highlight for us. As we were walking, we just kept stumbling across so many picturesque spots. There were cows grazing in some of the greenest fields that you've ever seen, little farm stands selling cheese and other local goods, beautiful gardens filled with vegetables and flowers. I've heard this valley described as feeling like a taste of heaven, and being there in person, that's exactly how it felt. But then eventually our wanderings led us to Trommelbach Waterfalls, which is another super unique waterfall in Lauterbrunnen Valley. It's the only glacial waterfalls in Europe that are located inside a mountain. They're completely underground and still accessible. It's actually made up of a series of 10 different falls, some of which are hundreds of feet high. You guys, it is impossible to truly capture on video just how impressive and powerful these waterfalls are. There are 3 different glaciers that all drain into this waterfall, and the roar, the sheer power of these falls was truly something to behold. But then once we'd finished exploring the falls, it really does feel like a whole different world when you're in there. But afterwards, we stopped at the little cafe at the bottom of the falls, and I got a little berry tart, a kombucha. I was in the mood for a little snack, and this definitely hit the spot. Then we continued our journey along the valley floor, making our way to, we'd spotted a gondola at the far end of the valley. And we caught that up to Muren, and from there made the call to ride all the way up to the top of Schildhorn Mountain. And that way we could fully take advantage of the final clear weather day on the forecast for our trip. And on the way up, we were gifted a huge treat. There was a yodeling group riding their way to the top of the mountain with us, and a few of them decided to put on a show. It was so fun. As we got higher and higher in elevation, I was so glad that we made the decision to ride all the way up to the top. I mean, the views we'd already had were incredible, but this was on a whole different level. At the summit, there's a viewing deck and revolving restaurant known as Piz Gloria, which quite literally translates to peak glory. And from it, you have breathtaking views in every direction of over 200 peaks. So what better way is there to enjoy incredible views? I ordered a glass of wine from the restaurant and then took it out to the viewing deck to just marvel at the vista before me. Eventually, we made our way back down the mountain and decided to stop in Muren because we'd really only been there briefly before, to wander around for a bit and then hopefully to find some food as well. This was another very sweet, quaint alpine village. We decided to stop at Hotel Edelweiss for dinner. We'd heard that the food here was good, but what really sold us on this spot was the view. We were able to grab seats on the patio and were treated to some incredible views while we ate. For dinner, I opted for a burger topped with a local egg and some other fun toppings. But Christopher went a bit more traditional. He ordered, it's called a roasty. It's a traditional Swiss dish of fried potatoes, kind of like a hash brown. It was really tasty. Well, good morning. We are up bright and early today because today we actually check out of the Airbnb that we've been staying in here in Wengen. We move to Zermatt. It's about 8 a.m. right now, exactly 8 a.m. Technically, we have until 10 to check out. However, we have had the most glorious weather the past couple of days, but today the weather really shifts and it looks like clouds and rain for pretty much the rest of our stay here. And we're going to Zermatt. The big thing that I wanted to see in Zermatt is the Matterhorn. And it's looking like our best chance of seeing it, hopefully we'll get to see it more, but our best chance of seeing it is going to be today. So we're going to head there now and hopefully get there a bit after noon. It's fairly clear now, but it's probably going to get progressively cloudy throughout the day. So we're hoping that by doing that, we'll be able to get in a quick viewing of the Matterhorn before the rain comes. Fingers crossed the strategy works though, because our other option was to stay most of the day here before heading to Zermatt, which honestly I'd love to do. Our time here in Wengen has been so beautiful. I feel like we've just tried to pack in as much as possible, knowing our time was limited, but I know the rest of Switzerland is going to be incredible as well. All right, train leaves in 10 minutes though, so let's go. Goodbye, cute apartment. You will be missed. All right, but then we hopped on the train, stopping briefly in Lauterbrunnen for one last quick peek at this fairy tale town, and then continued on to Zermatt. It was about a 3.5 hour ride from Wengen and really scenic. I don't think I've talked about it yet, but for this trip, we opted to get an 8-day Swiss travel pass instead of renting a car. Once you pay for it, the Swiss travel pass covers 100% of regular trains, ferries, and buses. Plus, it gives you free admission to any museums and 50% off of all gondolas and other tourist attractions. Everything went really smoothly on our ride to Zermatt, and when we got there, the weather was still nice, but we could see the clouds rolling in. We did still have a couple of hours before we could check into our guest house though, so we decided to ride the funicular up to Scheidegg. And this is a beautiful summit that on clear days has breathtaking views of the Matterhorn, but as you can see, it was pretty shrouded in clouds already by the time we got there. We were a bit disappointed for sure, but with this only being the first of, we were planning to spend 3 full days in Zermatt, we held out hope that we'd get to see it before the end of our trip. And in the meantime, we decided to just fully enjoy the hike down from Scheidegg to Zermatt. Now, as we were making our way down the mountain, we were getting a bit hungry, so we decided to stop at this spot, Findlerhof, to get some food to refuel. I ordered a latte and then we both got roasty. This was so delicious. It was one of the best meals that we had well in Switzerland. And I can only imagine on a clear day, the views here must be incredible. But then as we were finishing up our lunch, the dark clouds over the mountains started making our way to us, started beginning to sprinkle. So we decided to make haste and to try to pretty quickly make our way down the mountain. We made it to our guest house to check in right as the rain rolled in earnest, and just decided to enjoy a cozy evening in. The next morning, we woke up to beautiful clear blue skies in the valley, but unfortunately the peaks of the mountains were all shrouded in clouds, so we decided to hold off on doing any hiking and instead to spend some time exploring the town of Zermatt. Our first stop was to grab some breakfast. We came to this really cute little coffee shop and cafe called the Petit Royal. They had some incredible looking pastries, coffee. I ordered a mocha made with local Swiss chocolate. Also got a smoothie, but I have to say this mocha was really a highlight. But then afterwards, we just spent a few hours wandering the streets of Zermatt. Zermatt is a completely car-free town, so it's very pedestrian friendly and so beautifully landscaped too. We really enjoyed spending some time wandering the streets, seeing all the cute little window boxes and popping into a few shops. All right, well, we've been just enjoying a slow, chill start to our time in Zermatt, but the rain that we got last night has kind of slowly moved on throughout the day, which is amazing because when we were looking at the forecast a couple of days ago, it looked like it was going to rain our entire time here. Right now, the town of Zermatt is beautiful, so we just spent the morning wandering around, checking out some shops, getting some really delicious coffee, pastries. Right now, I just changed into some hiking gear because even though the Matterhorn itself is still shrouded in clouds, everything around us is beautiful. So I think we're gonna go on a hike that's a little bit less focused on the insane vistas and more on the topography of the area. Found a really cool looking hike that takes you along a glacier carved valley. There's a cool suspension bridge. So I think we're gonna check that out. We took the cable car up to Fury and then did it was about a 2 to 3 mile hike. The beginning of it takes you through the town of Fury, past beautiful old barns, through green pastures. Then after a bit, it leaves the town behind and you really just get to enter into nature. This was a really fun and interesting hike. There was a boardwalk, a suspension bridge. From the bridge especially, you had these incredible views of the gorge and valley below. Not far off from the suspension bridge, we checked out this glacier garden. I wasn't entirely sure what to expect from this. I'd never heard of a glacier garden before, but it ended up being this really cool rock formation that was carved by the receding glacier. And it almost looked like there were these giant potholes in the rocks. But it was really cool and huge too, so we just spent a bit of time wandering around and checking it out. Then a bit further on in the hike, there was a small mine that you could go in and explore. I guess they'd found soapstone there, but they'd only dug about 20 feet deep. So you could actually go in, walk in, and see the scratch marks left behind from the mining. After we finished the hike, it only took a couple of hours. We spent some time walking along the river in Zermatt and we're curious to see more of these old barns on stilts. And we learned that the purpose of the stilts topped with round stone discs was to prevent rodents from getting into the barns and eating the food. And from the river, we made our way to the Matterhorn Museum. It's this really cool underground museum that chronicles the history of the area, as well as shares the fascinating and sometimes controversial stories of the first handful of ascents up the Matterhorn and the surrounding mountains. Then after we got out, we explored the town a bit more before making our way to dinner, where we were greeted to a huge surprise. I guess the Swiss Travel Board was putting on a huge event right outside our dinner spot, so we got to enjoy that while waiting for our reservation time. But then of course we ordered dinner. I got another fondue, which again was excellent. The following morning, our final full day in Zermatt, we once again awoke to overcast skies, so we decided to head out of town for the day in search of better weather. There were a few cities that we were choosing between, but we ended up deciding to go to the towns of Visp and Brigg, just about an hour's train ride from Zermatt. So we started in Visp, wandering from the train station to the historic old town. It's a small but charming area built upon a hill filled with narrow alleyways and small squares, stately churches and towers. One of the things that particularly stood out to me in this town was this old sundial. We saw a few like it during our time in Switzerland, but I thought it was quite fascinating. Then after about an hour or so of casually meandering and taking in the sights, we caught the train to Brigg, just about a 20-minute ride away. Another historic town in the area, Brigg traces its history as far back as the 1200s and has a rich history in trade, as it's strategically placed at the foot of a key trade route through the Alps connecting Switzerland and Italy. The old town really reflects that, with numerous ornate houses once belonging to wealthy merchants, and most notably Stock Alper Palace. This palace is iconic to Brigg's skyline with its 3 onion domes, and it's one of Switzerland's finest examples of early Baroque architecture, which of course the architecture nerd in me was loving, but we were particularly drawn to the vast courtyards and the gardens beside it, which now serve as a public park. We were in the mood for a bit more of a chill afternoon though, so we hopped on the train back to Zermatt and spent the afternoon at a cute little cafe, sipping on this incredible hot chocolate and enjoying this chocolate and passion fruit cake. Then on our way to dinner, we were greeted with our best view of the Matterhorn yet. For about 5 minutes, the clouds cleared just enough for us to see most of the outline of the Matterhorn, which after waiting the past few days to see it, we were super grateful for. Then, as was the theme for the past few days, the clouds returned, so we made our way to dinner and finished our day with burgers. Alright, well our time in Zermatt is coming to an end, which means it's time for us to head on to our final destination of Lucerne. The weather here in Zermatt the past few days has been honestly surprisingly good. It really hasn't rained all that much, especially considering the forecast looked like it was going to rain pretty much the entire time that we were here. But the cloud cover around the Matterhorn did definitely alter our plans for our stay here quite a bit. So if you are planning a trip to Switzerland, I'll include not only what we did if you experience some cloudier days while you're here, but also we had some really beautiful hikes and activities planned. So I'll include some kind of like sunny and cloudy options for things that you can do while you're in Zermatt. I always put a trip itinerary of everything that we did in the description, so I'll just include some extra options there, because if you come when it's nice out, there's definitely some things that we didn't do just because of the weather that I'd recommend. But now we're on our way to Lucerne. It's a few hours away. I think we're going to stop in maybe Bern along the way. It's Switzerland's capital and I think has a few fun options for some things that we can do for a few hours just to kind of break up the trip and also see another part of Switzerland. So we're gonna do that now and probably pick up some breakfast along the way that we can enjoy on the train ride there. Look who decided to peek out to say goodbye to us. Do you see the top of the Matterhorn up there? It's kind of hard to tell, but you can see the silhouette of it. Apparently it's been snowing up, well, you can see the snow. It's been snowing up there the past few days. I think that's been why it's been shrouded in clouds. That's so fun though. So we started making our way to the train station, but very quickly decided to press pause on our plans. For the first time since we'd arrived in Zermatt, the Matterhorn's complete silhouette was visible. We were left awestruck by its beauty. So we checked there are webcams that show you what the views look like from each summit, and it looked like the views from Scheidegg were the clearest. So once again, we made our way to the summit, and in the about 10 minutes it took to get up to the top, the views only improved. We were gifted with incredible snow-capped views of the Matterhorn, complete with a light dusting of snow of everything on the ground that just made the entire place feel magical. This really made all our waiting feel worth it 1,000 times over. There really is something special about the Matterhorn. We just spent, honestly, a couple of hours enjoying the views. We got hot chocolates from the cafe. Christopher made a mini Matterhorn, and we just took it all in. After a couple of hours of clear skies though, the clouds returned, so we decided to bid Zermatt farewell and continued on to Bern. The ride to Bern was right along our route, just over 2 hours or so from Zermatt, and was really glad that we ended up coming to the city because it was so different from anything we'd seen in Switzerland up to that point. Bern's Old Town is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's known for its remarkably preserved medieval layout, and the architecture here was beautiful. All the buildings, from the Parliament buildings to the shops, are all crafted from sandstone. The streets are lined with all kinds of shops with cute little terraced gardens gracing the backs of the buildings. A few things that stood out to us: I love this clock tower. It's called the Zeitlog, and it's a really incredible piece of early engineering. It doesn't just tell you the time, it also shows the day, the date, the zodiac sign, the phase of the moon, and even the position of the sun. And then this cathedral too, this is the Cathedral of St. Vincent, also commanded our attention. It's a Swiss Reformed church with the tallest church tower in all of Switzerland at a soaring 101 meters. And the inside is just as impressive, with vaulted ceilings, intricate carvings, and stained glass windows in every direction. Then exiting the church, we made our way across the river to Bear Park. Bears have been the city's symbol since Bern's founding back in the 12th century, and legend has it that Duke Berthold V, the city's founder, named Bern after the first animal he hunted here, a bear. For centuries, bears have been kept here, a nod to the city's founding, and at Bear Park you can see them roaming this spacious hillside habitat that slopes right down to the river. And it was so fun. While we were there, one of the bears was hunting for apples, so we got to watch as it explored the habitat looking for treats. So we stayed a while watching the bears, but then eventually made our way back to the train station and boarded a train to our final destination, Lucerne. Good morning. Last night we made it to Lucerne. We're staying at Hotel Rebstock this is our last stay of the trip and our last full day in Switzerland. So I think we debated whether or not we wanted to have a bit more of a restful day or to do and see a little bit more, but since this is our only day in Lucerne, I think we're just going to try to pack in as much as we can. Our plan is to spend the morning visiting the old city. There are a ton of beautiful buildings, monuments. We saw this gorgeous covered bridge as we came into town, so we want to explore all of those this morning, and then assuming the weather cooperates, I think we're going to do a lake cruise followed by potentially a hike this afternoon. So lots to get up to today. I'm really looking forward to just really trying to make the most of our final full day here in Switzerland before we fly out tomorrow. So we started our morning with a little self-guided walking tour of Lucerne, beginning with this twin-towered church, the Hofkirche St. Leger. Dating back to the late Renaissance, it's actually built on the site of a destroyed medieval monastery, but despite being hundreds of years old, today the church is very much an active congregation, and I thought it was so sweet seeing the little kids area that's been created off to the side. But then just a short walk away, our next stop took us to the Lion Monument. Carved directly into the sandstone cliff, this moving statue of a dying lion commemorates the Swiss Guards who died in 1792 defending King Louis XVI at the Tuileries Palace during the French Revolution. Mark Twain described it as the most mournful and moving piece of stone in the world, and that feels fitting. Then making our way to the heart of the city, our next stop was Chapel Bridge, the iconic medieval bridge that connects the two sides of the city. This bridge is actually so impressive. It was built all the way back in 1333, making it the oldest covered wood bridge in all of Europe. Not only that, on the underside of the bridge, there are these triangular painted panels that were added in the 1600s, and they illustrate episodes from Lucerne's history and legends of its patron saints. And unfortunately, we learned that back in 1993, a devastating fire destroyed a portion of the bridge, but it's been meticulously restored, and today old and new blend together, and walking across it, you really do almost feel as if you're stepping back in time. Just across the river, we stopped at the Jesuit church, which stepping inside immediately felt like just such a dramatic contrast to pretty much every building we'd seen previously in Switzerland. The whole church almost feels like a frosted cake, very reminiscent of a French palace. But making this church feel extra special was the fact that as we walked in, the organist was practicing, so of course we had to stop to listen. Then exiting the church, we crossed back to the other side of the river, taking the opportunity to see the second and less well known of the two medieval bridges in Lucerne. Along the way, we admired the complex water system that regulates Lake Lucerne's water levels. At this point, we had worked up quite the appetite, so we decided to stop at Millefeuille for breakfast and some coffee. This was a really cute spot with some delicious food. We were able to grab seats right by the water and we got to enjoy some beautiful views while we ate. I ordered another mocha, my go-to coffee order for the trip, and also got some waffles. And we wrapped up our walking tour with wandering the old town with its colorful houses and painted facades. The frescoes that adorn these buildings feature everything from saints and merchants to mythical creatures and guild emblems. And over the years, they've essentially served and still serve today as kind of a public art gallery. Then, with our walking tour complete, we made our way down the promenade to Lake Lucerne to catch a ferry so that we could see the city and the surrounding area from a bit of a different perspective. So we boarded the ferry to Witznau, a town about an hour's boat ride down the lake from Lucerne. This ride was actually included in our travel passes, which was really nice. There was plenty of seating at the front of the boat too, so we ordered a couple of teas at the bar and then just enjoyed them while watching the stunning scenery and elegant Victorian hotels and homes pass before us. Then when we arrived in Witznau, we promptly boarded a cogwheel train up to Mount Rigi. With it being our last day in Switzerland, we wanted to get one last hike in, so we rode all the way up to the summit at 1,800 meters. The ride up was really beautiful, but as we increased in elevation, the clouds found us, and by the time we reached the top, we were almost completely enveloped in clouds. Fortunately though, as we made our way down, the clouds did begin to part. We were able to enjoy some great views of Lake Lucerne and the surrounding area. I have to say, I did actually really enjoy the vibes of this semi-clouded hike. The sea of clouds weaving through the mountains did really give everything kind of a storybook-like quality. We hiked for a couple of hours down to Rigi Keltbad and from there caught a cable car down to Weges. We spent a bit of time exploring this tranquil lakeside town while waiting for our ferry back to Lucerne. And from there, it was only about a 40-minute, very beautiful ride back to the city. Then that evening, we closed out our trip with a dinner at Wirthaus Taube, an intimate and cozy restaurant that focuses on traditional Swiss dishes. We both opted for local specialties. I ordered the lamb stew, and it was so delicious, the perfect finale to our time in Switzerland. Then the next morning, we checked out of our hotel bright and early and began our journey home, and this really was such a special trip. We enjoyed every moment. So I hope that you enjoyed coming along for our Switzerland adventures and that maybe if you're planning a trip to this country that it's giving you some inspiration and ideas for things to do. But until next time, friends, thank you all so much for watching and I'll see you all again very soon. Happy travels!